everybody, my name is Ali Truckin and I'm creating this video for Microbiology 205 at Arizona State University. So to learn more in depth about fermenting foods and what beneficial bacteria are created, I brewed my very own batch of kombucha at home. And I know some of you are probably thinking to yourself, what in the world is kombucha? And trust me, because I thought the exact same thing whenever I brewed my very first batch of kombucha at home and I saw this SCOBY. I was like, what in the world is this? So that's normal. Kombucha is a fermented tea that originated in China around 221 BC. This drink has become extremely popular in the United States. I want to say within like the past 10 to 20 years, it's really boomed. And it's because there are so many health benefits like probiotics, enzymes, and it aids in digestion, and there are so many delicious flavors to choose from. So let's get started. To start my kombucha, I first gathered a tea kettle to boil my hot water to steep the tea, and I gathered a gallon-sized mason jar. Now this is what's going to hold everything while the kombucha ferments. And I chose a green tea for this batch of kombucha. You can use green tea or black tea. And I had a cup of sugar and a SCOBY and a starter kombucha. So I have a little bit of starter kombucha here, and you can see the SCOBY on the bottom that is forming. Very normal for that to happen. And so I first started to boil the water, and after the water had boiled, I started steeping about 6 tea bags in the water, and I steeped that for about 10 minutes. So after those tea bags were done steeping, I poured the rest of the cold purified water. I started with a gallon, and I poured the leftover into my mason jar, and then I added the hot tea afterwards. And I did that because I didn't want the hot tea to warm up the container, because that would take just a little bit longer for it to cool down to room temperature. And it's imperative that the kombucha is at room temperature, or the tea is at room temperature before you add the kombucha or the SCOBY, because the SCOBY is a living organism, and you don't want any extreme temperatures to kill those beneficial microbes that are living inside of the SCOBY. And so the SCOBY that I used, I bought it at Whole Foods. You can find packaged SCOBYs for sale at various Whole Food stores, natural grocers, Market of Choice if you're in Oregon, some of them have those. You can also grow your own, and there's recipes online that show you and teach you step by step how to grow your own SCOBY. And you can also order them online, as crazy as it sounds. So there are a lot of options for obtaining a SCOBY to brew your own kombucha at home. And so once the tea was cooled down to a room temperature, I added the SCOBY and the starter kombucha, and then I covered it with a towel, and I used a hair tie just to make sure that towel was intact. And so, very easy process, very few steps and ingredients to do. And so, SCOBY, I did want to cover what that means, because a lot of you are probably wondering what exactly a SCOBY is. SCOBY is an acronym, and it stands for Symbiotic Culture of Bacteria and Yeast. So the SCOBY contains all of the beneficial bacteria and the yeast that are inside of the kombucha. All right. And so after everything was added and the tea was cooled and the SCOBY and the starter kombucha were added, I stored my mason jar, just imagine it full of liquid, and the SCOBY, which they're kind of gross looking. I stored this covered in my pantry for a week. And so that week caused the fermentation, or it didn't cause the fermentation, but during that week, the cultures inside of the kombucha started to ferment. And I didn't have enough time to do a second fermentation on this batch. and that would have added carbonation to the kombucha. I just didn't have enough time because I only had a week to do this assignment, but that always is an option to do as well. And so I do want to cover some of the microbiology sides of kombucha. So some of the microbes that are involved in this fermentation process, according to culturesforhealth.com, some of the beneficial microbes that are involved are Acetobacter, Lactobacillus, Pediococcus, and this one I might mess up the name, but it's Gluconacetobacter. And some different yeast strains that are found in the kombucha include Saccharomyces, Brettanomyces, and Zygosaccharomyces. And so those are just some of the various cultures and microbes that are found in the SCOBY. And now I'm going to cover the purpose of why I added the ingredients that I did. And so this recipe was very simple. It only had 5 ingredients. The first one was tea. The second is purified water, sugar, the SCOBY, and finally the starter kombucha. The sugar provides nutrients for the bacteria to feed off of, and that's how the fermentation happens. The SCOBY and the starter kombucha provide the actual microbes, and the tea is just added for flavor, and the water is added for an environment for all of this fermentation to happen. The metabolic processes that the microbes are undergoing is fermentation. The microbes in the kombucha culture are using the sugar as food, and they're multiplying to create a larger colony of the nice gut-healthy bacteria and the probiotics that we love to get from kombucha. The fermentation and the use of sugar as a nutrient caused the kombucha to start off as a sweet tea, and once the fermentation process is finished, it has a more tangy, almost a sour flavor because that sugar is being used up. More changes that happen during the fermentation process is that alcohol is produced during the first fermentation. And during the second fermentation, which is where you would add more sugar to the finished product, and you would add that batch to an airtight container. What happens then is the bacteria continues to use the sugar, whether it be from more sugar that you add, or a syrup for flavor, or even fresh fruit for flavor. It converts that into carbon dioxide. And so the carbon dioxide is trapped inside of that bottle, and it causes the carbonation. And during the second fermentation, it is very important to burp your bottle. So while you're getting to the level of carbonation that is desired, if you go over to your airtight bottle and you just lift the top to let out a little bit of carbon dioxide while the sugar is being used by the bacteria, that will ensure that your bottle does not explode everywhere from the pressure. That can be very dangerous. The pH of the kombucha is more on the acidic side because the bacteria that live in the culture are known as acetophiles. And that means that they thrive best in acidic environments. And this batch of kombucha that I created, it was very successful. You can see that a lot of it is gone now, actually. Some more is in the fridge. But I have made a few batches in the past, and I've had them be very, very successful. I've also neglected one for several weeks. Well, no, it was probably more like several months. And once I remembered that it was there, I went to go check on the batch, and I found that mold had grown all over the top of the SCOBY. And that is not the type of cultures and colonies that you want growing in your kombucha. So I had to throw that one away and sanitize all of the equipment that it had come into contact with and throw away the SCOBY and just start brand new. And this is a really fun tea and like a really fun drink to make because you can customize it every single time. You can use green tea or black tea. You can use various types of sugar. A lot of people even use agave or honey to add as a sweetener and to give that bacteria some nutrients so they can grow and multiply. And you can use various types of fruits and sweeteners, like different syrups to add different flavors as well. In the past, I've made ginger blueberry kombucha. I've made a strawberry mint kombucha. And so it's just a really fun process. Thank you.